Sister's in the barn and she's lifting up her skirts. Her boyfriend is dropping his pants. Pa, they're going to pee in your hay. And he said, son, you got your facts right, but you have arrived at the wrong conclusion. There is no going back to 1860, 1861. Would this sacrifice be made in vain? As I would not have slaves, I would not certainly re-enslave. No, there's no going back. That was the crux of our argument today. He is fixed that his rebellious forces remove themselves from our nation. He is determined that he continues as best he can, although they are now free, to retain slavery, although no whites have yet to volunteer for such work. And that's where we stand. That is where we stand. And at this point, only Mr. Davis can end the fighting today. Only Mr. Davis can stop the bloodshed. Whoever dies after this, may the blood be on his head.
You alluded, Mr. Lincoln, to threats against your life after you'd been elected, but before you were sworn in. And there have been many rumors circulating about threats against either of you, plots to kidnap or assassinate either of you, your counterparts. I ask you directly, have either of your governments countenanced either the kidnapping or assassination of your counterpart? And if so, why? Mr. Lincoln?
I certainly have not. The idea of kidnapping leaders, or certainly of assassinating leaders, is not within the principles of this country. Although given the black flag operations of under the direct control of the man he considers to be his most trusted advisor, Judah Benjamin, who have poisoned water supplies, have attempted to set our cities on fire, have attempted to present me as a gift a shirt soaked with yellow fever, we would not and have not. And when you think about it, sir, why would I assassinate Mr. Davis the way the war is going? I mean that with all due respect, sir.
Mr. Davis, has your government contemplated such schemes?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The Confederate government has countenanced no such thing, nor will it ever. It is not our custom. It is not our custom to engage in such dishonorable acts even in wartime. I wish I could say the same for my counterpart. But the raid on Richmond by Brigadier General Isaac Wistar in February of 1864 belies that. It was the foulest of foul deeds, especially because Brigadier General Wistar's orders provided for the capture of me and members of my cabinet. And what is even worse, if it can be imagined, was the so-called Dahlgren-Kilpatrick raid on Richmond, February 28th through March 2nd of 1864, and Ulrich Dahlgren's orders that were on his corpse after he was killed, which provided not for the capture, but for the killing of Jeff Davis and his cabinet. Now, both of those raids had to have the approval of Mr. Lincoln.
You know they did, or you speculate
they did? One doesn't have to speculate. How could a raid be carried out on Richmond without Mr. Lincoln's approval? He's the commander-in-chief of his armies, is he not? Now, this kind of black flag warfare is totally alien to us. Now, yes, we have a Secret Service, and yes, we have an espionage department within the Secret Service Bureau, and yes, we have action teams and agents all over the country and in Canada, but none has ever been instructed by me or any member of my government to kidnap or assassinate or in any way inflict personal harm on a Union leader, on a Northern leader. If any harm comes to Mr. Lincoln by any agent or agency of the Confederate government, I assure you it will be purely a rogue operation. A rogue operation, a madman. It would not be pursuant to anything I ordered or that was ordered by any member of my government.
I wonder, gentlemen, 4 years into the war now, perhaps its end in sight, perhaps not. Has all the bloodshed and suffering been worth it, given the goals you set for your respective governments? Mr. Davis?
Oh, the short answer is yes.
Mr. Lincoln?
The short answer is yes. We have fought a war much as our founding fathers fought a war that gave us this country. I believe, not to put too much light on it, that this war will be viewed as the one that saved our country. Pray God, I hope I'm right.
Well, I thank you both for your time, and I can only encourage you to redouble your efforts, but if not, then to bring this war to a speedy halt. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There actually was a peace conference between the North and the South on February 3rd of 1865, just 2 months before the Civil War ended. Mr. Lincoln attended the conference at the last minute to represent the North, believing he could prevent more bloodshed. However, Jefferson Davis did not attend. The South was represented by its Vice President, Alexander Stephens. Our play imagines, like Lincoln, that Davis also came to the meeting, setting the stage for what was Lincoln's last great debate. So, gentlemen, what a tremendous job. I'd like for each of you to introduce yourselves and tell us what you really are, which I think is very, very impressive.
I'm John Fazio. I'm with the Cleveland Civil War Roundtable. I've been a past president, as have Mel and William. And if you want to know what my sympathies really are, do you want to know? I'm a strong unionist. I believe that secession technically is a right. It is legal. But the next question is, why are you seceding? And if you have a noble cause, a noble reason for seceding, then I think it has to be recognized. But obviously, the preservation of the institution of slavery did not constitute a noble cause or a noble reason, and therefore it was resisted, rightfully, in my opinion. What else would you like to know? I've written a book which is being published right now. It's called Decapitating the Union. It's all about the assassination on April, almost 150 years ago to the day, April 14th, and the attempted assassinations that occurred in Washington on April 14th. So watch for it. Okay, anything else?
You are an attorney?
I am an attorney, yes. Yes.
Davis, how did you start portraying Jefferson Davis?
How did I begin? They needed somebody to play the role, and nobody else was willing. It's not to say I think the South did have some legitimate grievances. I do, but to rupture the Union to preserve slavery, whatever legitimate grievance it has goes out the window. Someone, Morris Metterlink, once said something that I love to quote because I think it's so profound. He said, at every crossroads on the path that leads to the future, tradition has placed 10,000 men to guard the past. And I think that's what Davis did, and Benjamin and Seddon and the whole Confederate leadership. They had 10,000 men guarding the past. The rest of the world was moving on to the future. All the major powers in the 1860s, when the war was fought, all the major powers, Britain, Russia, France, had already abolished slavery. 17 other countries around the world had already abolished slavery. So it was anachronistic in the United States. And that Davis and Benjamin and Seddon and these guys thought they could preserve this institution into the future on some undetermined date into the future was just folly. Was just folly, silliness, kid stuff. Okay.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you for welcoming us back. This is the second time we've done the show here. I do see some familiar faces. Jerry, we're very grateful for the invitation to return, and we hope you've enjoyed it. My name is William Vaudry. I'm a magistrate of Cleveland Municipal Court. I'm also a lawyer, and as John said, we're all with the Cleveland Civil Roundtable. We've all had a stint as president at one time or another. It's a great organization. If anybody's ever up in Cleveland and would like to come, you're more than welcome. We have a website. You can look up our events, and we'd be more than happy to welcome you there. I'm Union Blue down to my toes, Ohio born and raised. The Confederacy had maybe 0.0003% good reason to secede. All the rest of the reasons to stay in the Union, I think, were overwhelming and ought to have been listened to by the better angels of their nature. I've always been a great admirer of Abraham Lincoln, not so much an admirer of Jefferson Davis, but I think these gentlemen both do an excellent job portraying them. And as was said, Davis did not actually attend the Hampton Roads Conference, but there was a very lively discussion. Those who've seen the Steven Spielberg movie Lincoln, you see a little bit of the conference where Lincoln is talking to Alexander Stephens, the Confederate vice president. And it would have, I think, been a much different event had Davis himself shown up. But I think it also would likely have had the same end result as the one that we posit, which is the war would have ground on until there was a decisive federal victory in the field. I would also welcome any questions. If not, I'll turn it over to Mel.
My name is Mel Maurer. I'm just an old retired guy now. I was never a lawyer. Had to use lawyers a few times. Rather not. In my retirement, I've had the great pleasure of pursuing my interest in Civil War history, and in particular Abraham Lincoln. I belong to the Lincoln Forum, where every November we go and get our Lincoln refreshed with new information. We, the three of us, were asked to do this as a presentation for our roundtable about 5 years ago. None of us sought to play the characters we play. Once we did, though, it became rather popular. And we use whatever proceeds we get from this. They're donated back to our roundtable, and then those are used for Civil War causes. We appreciate the wonderful audience you were here tonight. We always say to John, John, you were horrible tonight. Congratulations. He, of course, has the tougher job. John and I are dear friends. Sometimes people think we actually don't like each other. We're dear friends. And it's a tribute to John that he makes Jefferson Davis, in my opinion, so real. Thank you, John.
Question?
How in the 5 years since you started have you changed this? Have you changed it?
We follow an outline. We follow an outline, as you probably saw here. But if you were to read that, you would find that not much of it is what we said here tonight. We have never done it the same way twice, which keeps it very interesting for us. Because if he says something, I'm ready for him the next time, and vice versa. And so we kind of know what we play off of each other. We have not done this for some time, so it was good to get back in, get our blood up again. So it does keep it fresh.
You may have noticed that Mr. Davis offered a short one-word answer to my last question, and then I immediately turned to Mr. Lincoln. In all fairness, I should have let John go on at greater length, but that's part of what keeps us lively, is we never quite know what's going to happen next. And if you want to talk to John later, he'll give you his...
5-minute peroration prepared in answer to that question. After I said the short answer is no, and then I was ready to go, and he went over to Lincoln. Cut me off.
You probably thought that Davis was going to win tonight, huh?
I think we had a question in front.
Have you done this in the South?
Not yet. Not yet.
The question was, have we done it in the South? And we have not.
I'm a Clevelander, but I lived in Franklin, Tennessee for 4 years. I'd love to do it in the nice little theater they have down there.
I would like to see how it turned out in Atlanta.
I think I'd have to take my beard off real quick when I left the theater.
I think we're intellectually honest enough. It would be pretty much the same presentation, but I suspect the mood in the room might be significantly different. And we thank you.
Thank you very much. Great town.
Thank you.